I'm going to focus on the FH patient who had an MI. I'm going to present two publications that are, I think, very relevant to this problematic of the FH patient with a heart disease. The first study was alluded yesterday a little bit by Francois. I will give a little bit of another angle focusing on FH. So this study from Nanjing studied patients over 4 years, 2009 to 2013, prospectively, and examined everybody who had an acute coronary syndrome. You see large numbers, 4,500 people, and fished out the ones that have FH. And look what she found. We said that the prevalence of FH is 0.5 in us, in the general population. Look at the patients with an acute coronary syndrome. It is from 1.6 to 5.5, depending on the criteria. I'm a fan of the Dutch lipid clinic criteria, so let's focus on this one. So already 4 times higher risk for acute coronary syndrome. Look how much younger they were. The ones with FH had an age of 50 versus the ones with no FH who had an age of 66. The LDL cholesterol, the ones with FH were running around until their MI with an LDL of 255, while the non-FH had an average of 123. And look at the statin treatment. Only about 1/3 of FH patients had a statin, and under this treatment, they had an LDL of 255. So they were walking, ticking bombs for an MI, which happened. And now it's interesting to see, because this was a prospective study, how did they come in with what lipid-lowering treatment, and how were they discharged? I have to say, and Francois, congratulations, they did a very good job. You see that the FH patients were discharged 74% on high-intensity statins. I mean, it would be better if it was like 90 or 100, but 74 is still not bad. And a year later, they didn't really stop the statins. About 70% of them continue being on high-intensity statins. But, and this is that tragic number in this slide, look how many achieved an LDL of less than 70. 4.5%. I mean, this is a massive failure on our part. And what is even more interesting, even if you adjust on what statins they were getting and on all other cardiovascular risk factors, a person with FH and an acute coronary syndrome has an increased risk to have another event compared to the non-FH person. And look at how much increased risk is this young man or woman that come with an acute coronary syndrome. 3.5% higher risk for a repeated event within 1 year compared to the MI patient with no FH. And now, the last paper I want to focus on is just something that just published. This is a different study. It's a retrospective study. The previous one was prospective in 2 centers in Massachusetts, academic centers. And they looked how many, it's the young MI registry. So they looked at the young that had MI, and the young were defined as patients younger than 50 years. There were about 2,000 of those individuals, median age 45. 10% of those had FH based on the Dutch lipid clinic criteria, 10%. As you said, in this room, we are 0.5%. They have 10%. Their LDL was 180 compared to 113 in the non-FH patients. And look at the statin treatment these people have before their MI and after their MI. Let's focus on the FH patients. Before their MI, only 22% had a high-intensity statin treatment. After the MI, and these are, as I said, academic centers in Boston, 63%, only 63% were discharged on a high-intensity statin. You can argue, come on, it was increased from 22 to 63, but still, it should have been actually pretty much 90 to 100%. Ezetimibe was prescribed in 5% upon discharge versus in 1% of non-FH patients. And what happened in 1 year? Again, a tragic situation. Look at how many patients achieved an LDL lower than 70. So 82% had more than 70, so 18% managed to get an LDL of less than 70, even though they had FH and an MI. And I was trying to figure out how many did they get PCSK9 antibodies, or were they, why this failure again? And they reported only one patient with non-FH that got, from this 2,000 people, got a PCSK9 antibody. So I just have 3 points to make. Please remember, again, I repeat myself, I know, that almost 1 in 10 patients with young people with an MI have FH. Please recognize them. 2, these people are really at high risk for a recurrent event within 1 year. So they are super high-risk patients. And on top of this, they are not diagnosed, they're undertreated, and they almost never achieve their target values. Thank you very much for your attention.